How much time you gonna have when you die? Within that 2-month period, I lost 40 pounds. The first year, I ended up losing 100 pounds. Once I got to running an hour nonstop, I told him I've been running, and he just started laughing. The average human in America, male, is 168 pounds. I lost 178 pounds. I was a mean, lean running machine. I said, man, I'm going to win this thing. What you talking about? Keep up. If I don't get up and fight to get my life back, my son's going to come home from work and find me dead on his couch from depression and sadness. And even though after that I got shot 4 more times, he was like, if you were almost 400 pounds, you wouldn't have been able to hop to your feet like you did. You would have been dead. I told somebody one day, I have never in my life hugged and cried with so many grown men since I've been going around speaking about running for your mental. You got to become the CEO of your own health care. Mental health care especially. It's worse than cancer. Cancer at least shows up physically. You can get it treated, but guilt manifests itself physically in your body. You don't know it's tied to your guilt. Your trauma has trained you, and until you take care of your trauma and retrain yourself, you're just going to continue doing the same things. The busier you get, the more demanding the load is, the more desperate the hurt is. I'm looking for the hurting. I'm looking for people that are, were, or will be where I was, where I am, and where I'm going. I said, because I know he lives. I said, I know I'm going to get through this situation. I can't tell you when, I can't tell you how, but I know as long as that sun come up tomorrow and the moon come up tonight, the earth and the heavens remain. He's been faithful.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Rosabel Unscripted, where stories meet real strength. I'm your host, Rosabel Unscripted, and today we are going to meet a man who ran toward pain, through trauma, and into purpose. His name is Aaron Lee Burros. Hi, Aaron. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Yourself?
Doing pretty good. Happy to be here with you this morning, or wherever people are
Around the
in the
globe.
world.
Yeah, and I
That
travel
is
a
right.
lot, so I always got to remember where I am. But I am in
Exactly.
the central United States right now, so I think we're on the same time.
I think we are. Yes, I'm in Central Texas. So welcome again. And so, Aaron, you are known as the running servant, right? Is that correct?
Put
Grew
a
up in
name here.
Houston.
Yeah, I'm in Houston. Houston, Texas is the
Oh,
place to be.
absolutely. So 2009, you graduated from College of Biblical Studies, right?
Correct.
Let's talk about it.
Oh, what's part of it? I went to the College of Biblical Studies later in life. I was telling my children how important it was to get an education. So my older son, he said, Dad, if it's that important, how come you didn't finish college? How come you ain't go to college? I was like, I wanted to, but life happened and then kids. He was going to high school. And I told him, I'm going to go back to school and finish before you graduate. And so that's what I did. He ended up graduating. Being a parent is challenging, and you're parenting yourself at the same time. I graduated from the College of Biblical Studies in 2009. My birthday is in January. I always set up my annual doctor's appointment the week of my birthday. I was turning 40. So I also was doing my prostate exam, which is a huge thing for men, especially in my family, because prostate cancer runs on my dad's side. I have an uncle right now battling that. I was a little scared to go, but I ended up going anyway and had the exam and everything done, went through my physical, got with the doctor and asked him how was it. He said everything went well, except that I needed to lose 40 pounds or it was going to lose me. I'm sitting there. I'm got kids. I'm driving over 100 miles a day in Houston. I was telling him I was too busy. And he said, how much time are you going to have when you die? And I was like, oh, ooh, yeah, that's a good one. And then I asked him, how much weight will I lose when I die? And he was touche. And then he asked me, how soon do you want to die? I didn't have a comeback for that. That began my desperation in my weight loss journey. I think my transformation happened in stages. One, it was the actual going to school and getting my degree. So the intellectual, mental stage of my life, had already engaged a spiritual walk with Christ in my life. And now here I was, 394 pounds, morbidly obese. I would go on a journey to not only deal with the physical aspect, but more importantly, the emotional and the trauma that I hadn't even considered to be trauma. And that was the emotional eating that I had did all my life.
Wow. So you turned into running, right?
I tried to run, if you want to call it that, at 394 pounds. I don't know how much of it was running. I could move my arms faster, but my feet wasn't going. So I ended up starting off literally trying to just walk, run for 15 minutes. When I was able to get to 15 minutes of running, I ended up adding 5 more minutes. And then 15 to 20 and 25 to 30, 30 to 35. I ended up getting to where I could run nonstop for an hour. That took about 2 months. Within that 2-month period, I lost 40 pounds. I also eating right because the whole world was on the Biggest Loser challenge. The company I worked for even had it there. And what was so crazy about it is that my boss put me in charge over it for the company because he knew I was working out, running, and trying to lose weight. He thought I would be a good poster child for the company. He's eating healthier. He's been doing the program before our company started it. Within the first 2 months, I ended up losing 40 pounds. It really did inspire a lot of people in my company to join the Big Loser Challenge that our company was doing. They were giving away prizes, milestone gifts, gift cards, and then plus our insurance company was giving money back off your premiums by doing it and losing weight. So a lot of people end up joining. The first year, I ended up losing 100 pounds. Once I got to running an hour nonstop, I would add 10 minutes and try to run an hour and 10 minutes. Once I got up to that, it was an hour and 30, an hour and 40, 50 to 2 hours. When I got to running 2 hours straight, I added 15 minutes on. And so I worked my way up to where I could do 2 hours and 15 minutes. Then it was 2 hours and 45 and 3 hours. And by the time I got to running 3 hours nonstop, running just became a joy. It didn't start off that way. I was in a lot of pain to begin with. I remember being at work one day and I was in tears just trying to move around. And I told my boss, I really need to go to the doctor. He told me to go ahead, clock out. I went to the doctor. My doctor was examining me. My knees were killing me. My back was on fire. My feet and ankles, everything was just hurting. My doctor was asking me questions. Of course, I'm losing weight, and he's wondering what I've been doing. I told him I've been running, and he just started laughing. Ice everything, take some ibuprofen or Tylenol, and keep up the good work. At some point, pain is going to go away. You're 40 plus years old. You're using parts of your body that you haven't used since you was in high school. And he said, they're getting stronger and you're experiencing the pain of strengthening your body and losing weight. He says, keep going. I promise you, the pain is going to go away one day. And I just kept going and going. The first year I lost 100 pounds. The next 4 years, I would come to lose over 78 pounds total. So in 5 years, I lost 1 human male size body plus 10 pounds. The average human in America, male, is 168 pounds. I lost 178 pounds. I was a mean, lean running machine. And I was running because it was relaxing. I was connecting with nature, connecting with God. I tried running with AirPods in. I didn't like it. I really wanted to listen to my body, nature, my surroundings, and more importantly, my own thoughts. I needed to stop drowning out the conversation I needed to have with myself. As I was doing all of this, I was like, what got me here? I knew it was emotional eating. I was addicted to Bluebell ice cream and Mountain Dew. And that was pretty much what I had right before I went to bed at night. I would go to the store, pick me up a pint of blue, some M&Ms, and a cold red Mountain Dew. And that's what I would sit back and relax and enjoy. It was comforting to me. I replaced that with running, and running had a lot more benefits. But the issue for me was, why was I eating like that? What was it about my life? What was it about me having a lack of comfort, not feeling fulfilled, not knowing who I am on a deeper level, to where there were some things that I needed to heal? So my running at that point became what most people would say therapy. I used to believe that. I used to say it as well. Running was my therapy. But running isn't therapy. It's therapeutic, but it's not therapy. As I ran longer and would go out to run 6 to 7 hours at a time, I was running on my long runs upwards to marathon distance, 36 to 40 miles, and would spend that time really examining myself. What had I been through? What were my disappointments? What were my hurts? What were my pains? Where was I afraid? What was I scared of? And I had to begin to do a lot of work with myself. And that's when the transformation took place. I was this energetic person. I was running, I was biking, and not just running anything. I was running trails. So when somebody first told me, you ought to do a marathon, I was like, what's a marathon? And they was like, 26.2 miles. The only thing I remembered about that was the Boston Marathon that we used to watch on TV growing up. And I was like, 26.2 miles. I said, I ran that the other day. And they was like, you have? I said, yeah. I said, I normally on my long runs, I do at least about 30, 36 to 40 miles. And they was like, you need to do an ultra marathon then. And I was like, what's an ultra? And they said, an ultra is a 50K. It starts at a 50K, which is like 31.7 miles. And they said, well, at least do that. And I was like, okay. So I signed up for the Brazos Bend 100 trail running over Texas. While I'm training and still running, I'm running over 30 miles on my long runs. And I'm like, that's not challenging. And so I was like, what's the next mileage? And it was a 50 mile. I never ran 50 miles before. I did up to 40, but I never ran 50. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do the 50 miler. I changed my sign up from the 50K to the 50 miler, and that's what I was going to run. In the midst of all of that, I had people commenting to me that I needed to turn professional. The only thing I knew about running professionally was the Boston Marathon or the Olympics, like running track and field. So I didn't know what people were talking about. But what they were talking about is trail running, like competing, being on teams. And so at first it was just some of my friends, some running buddies, different people from run clubs, Katie Fit and Black Girls Run, Cypress Running Club. There's one that my pastor was part of, Fort Bend Fit. out in Sugar Land, Texas. And so it wasn't until I started getting professional athletes asking me if I ever thought about competing professionally with running. They was like, man, you killing it out there on the trails. I was never part of this community, and I just started out of necessity. So I'm getting all these people saying this, and I'm thinking about it a little bit more serious. One day I go to church, and after church, I'm talking to my pastor, and he say, big man, he said, has you ever thought about running professionally? At that point, I was like, okay, God, I hear you. Let me investigate this. My pastor, he said, he said, my coach, the professional running coach, and I talked to him about you all the time. He shared your times and trail runs. And he asked me, had you ever ran track and field? I told him no. He said he'd be willing to talk to you if you want. If you want to talk to him, I'll set it up for you. So he ended up setting a meeting up for me. I go talk to him. We get to talking, and he tells me about the trail running, the competitions, things of that nature, and you answer some of my questions. He was like, you can even get endorsement deals. I was like, endorsement deals? I started thinking I'd be the Michael Jordan of distance running and get my own shoe or something. He said there's prize money to be won. I was working in retail management, and retail is a beast. Anybody that ever worked retail is, you could take everybody in retail and send them to war. They'll take over a country. So I was like, man, I could make 6 figures or more in cash prize monies, get endorsement deals by doing something that I'm enjoying. I was like, that's a job right there. That's one I need to have. I committed to training under him. I committed to going professional. And 2 weeks before the Brazos Bend 100, where I was going to run a 50 miler with some professional runners, and he wanted me to try to keep up with certain runners. And I was like, keep up. I said, man, I'm going to win this thing. What you talking about keep up? He just wanted to see if I can keep up with him. But in my mind, I was going to go out there and win it. 2 weeks before that, we had a workplace shooting, and I ended up saving several of my coworkers' lives, but I got shot 5 times. November 28th, 2015, around 8:30, between 8:30 and 9 at night, is when the best thing that has ever happened to me over the last 10 years happened. And that was the actual shooting, me being shot. Everything after that was worse. It only got worse. It was a living nightmare. For the next 5 years, several years of sleep deprivation. And the last 2 years that I'm in now, the anniversary of my workplace shooting is in November. It'll be the 10th year anniversary. I am still battling the PTSD and its effects. But after 10 years, I am in a place where life is doable on the level that I need to live it. I am still not without the challenges of what happened that day.
And that was what happened in
2021, I was extremely desperate. Before 2021, 2019, I was extremely desperate, laying on my couch. And I said to myself, if I don't get up and fight to get my life back, my son's going to come home from work and find me dead on his couch from depression and sadness. I was sleep deprived from the actual event. I didn't sleep for the first 10 days afterwards, and sleep deprivation would go on to last almost 7.5 years. I was hallucinating. I had anxiety that made your body, if you ever hit your funny bone, that tingling sensation of the funny bone, not the pain part, but the tingling sensation, that's how my whole body was. My anxiety was so bad. I would go from these moments or periods of anxiety, hypervigilant, extreme fear of death, and then drop into these depressive moods. I went from this anxiety high to this depression low. And then I would go into these crying spells that would last 2 to 4 hours, uncontrollable. Couldn't stop crying. And it would just cycle. I just couldn't take it any longer. It was a miserable existence. That's how I described it to my psychologists and psychiatrists. A miserable existence. So I went from the end of 2015, here I am in 2019, and this is where I am at. I tell my doctors I have to do something. We brainstormed some stuff, and my psychologist asked me, what do you believe would help you the most? And I said, running. And he was like, I figured you'd say that. But the problem with my running was I got shot 4 times in the back area, and I had a bullet that's still in my right gluteus maximus. So I have scarring back there with this bullet in there. My right leg has progressively gotten weaker over the years, and the pain gets debilitating sometimes. Sometimes when I'm running, my leg would just give out from up under me. The pain gets worse as I run. So running wasn't a light thing. I ended up knowing about this run club with some people out of Conroe, Texas. They have a 50 states, 50 marathon club, and it's very popular. People all over the U.S. and the globe completing their 50 marathons in 50 states or 50 half marathons in 50 states. I knew what they were doing, and I knew I wanted to run, but I also knew I had to get up and get out. With depression, especially the depression I was experiencing, getting up, brushing your teeth was exhausting. Getting up, taking a shower was exhausting. Trying to go outside to do something was impossible. So I would get up and just go out. I had a Starbucks across the street from the apartments where I was living. Sit over at the Starbucks and sit in the sun. I didn't know at the time the science behind it all, but I just knew the sun made me feel a whole lot better. So I would just sit in a chair, let the sun beam on me. And if you're in Houston, Texas, you hiding from the sun. You're not trying to let it beam on you. But it would help me to feel so much better. It was a struggle. I knew I needed to get out in whatever I needed to do. Another thing I thought about spiritually, the principle of reaping and sowing, I knew I needed to focus on some people that were less fortunate than myself. I also need, in getting out and going, that would also force me to get around people. So I came up with this plan that I was going to do 50 marathons in 50 states, but in 50 weeks. It takes people years to do 50 marathons in 50 states, but I was going to accomplish it within 50 weeks. I put a plan together, and I'm like, this is life or death. I'm going after this. And so 2019, I'm like, I'm going to run a Houston Chevron Marathon to kick it off. And I'm going to get around people, start building trust with people. I'm going to serve the community. I'm going to raise money for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. I'm going to focus on those kids and the health conditions that they have that they can't just put off. They're vulnerable. I wanted to focus on them and raise money for that charity. I was gung-ho and ready to go. And then the world shut down. The pandemic hit. Races were canceling. Chevron canceled. I'll do the Louisiana Marathon. It canceled. I was going to do the Mesa, Arizona Marathon. It canceled. Everything was canceling. And then they started canceling flights. You couldn't fly. And so I was like, just when I'm thinking that I'm going to fight to get my life back, the world's shutting down. How long is this going to last? How long am I going to be here? How long? And it was a very trying time for me. My doctors were concerned how I would take things because you had an increase in domestic violence during that time. People were committing suicide. People had murdered each other because they were around each other. And we're talking about families. I live in the Energy Corridor, right off of Terry Hershey Park in Houston, right down the street off of Briar Forest and some townhomes. It was a son and a mother living together. They were both elderly. The mom was more so than the son, but he literally could not take his mom anymore. So he shot and killed her, called the police, told them what he did and to come get him and put him in jail. The whole thing was, he said, at least he didn't have to listen to his mother's mouth anymore. The apartment building that I lived in, the police were there nonstop with domestic violence. Happened between family members, lovers. It was crazy. This lady in my apartment building was cheating on her husband. And the guy, because of COVID, was not in the picture and wanted to be with the woman, but because everybody was working from home, she couldn't get away. He went over there to be with her and confront the husband. It was a whole mess. Several police cars come out. The guy had kicked the door in and he was going to fight, kill the husband and take the woman. It was crazy. My doctors were very concerned about me. And I told them, I've been in my own pandemic for 4 years. I was like, this isolation isn't getting to me because that's what I've been doing for the last 4 years. I'm trying to get out of it. People got to see how I've been living for 4 years, while the world around me was just continuing to go on. These conflicts, these battles that people were having amongst themselves, I was having within myself. When things shut down, it got worse for me. I thought I was on the right track of fighting to get better. I don't know when this is going to stop. They couldn't say when it was going to stop. At first, they thought it was going to be 6 months. And I just knew it wasn't going to be 6 months. We were like a year into this stuff, year and a half. In 2021, I embarked on my journey to do 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 weeks, 5 years after being shot 5 times. I was trying to raise $50,000 for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. People ask me, why didn't you just do it virtual? Because I'm depressed. Because I got to fight.
Hold on. Running virtually?
During COVID, a new thing kicked in called virtual runs. Basically, you would sign up for the New York Marathon and you would have to run it virtually. In other words, you would run it in your community, complete the run, and then upload your Strava or Garmin to their website to show that you ran. Then they would send you your medal and your shirts. So that became the new big running business. The guy that first started it was the Trans Tennessee Run. There's an ultra that goes from Nashville to Memphis. That year, he decided to tell people to do it virtually and report their results to him. That's what people did. They made their own courses, ran their own race, and they submitted it. It was all for fundraising for charities. You still want charities to get donations. It was hard for charities during that time. A lot of people weren't giving. So a lot of things like St. Jude, although St. Jude had a great resource and a lot of money saved up and was helping other charities, there were a lot of charities that depended upon monthly donations that wasn't surviving any longer. As with a lot of businesses.
Let me tell you, among all the things that COVID taught all of us, one of the things that just brought to light is how we cannot be isolated. We function in a community no matter what. I graduated from nurse practitioner school in 2020, 3 days prior to shutting everything down in the Austin area. I didn't do the walk, but I think they probably programmed an online event, and I was like, what's the point? But anyways, it's very interesting. I'm glad we're semi back to post-COVID era for sure. But about all the things you have mentioned here, one of the things that keeps coming to mind is prior to the shooting and the incident you went through, you were training, whether it was for losing weight, and then of course you wanted to go into this ultra marathon and so on. I don't know, this is probably my opinion. A lot of times in life, we train for who knows what, right? In other words, we do certain things, but it's almost as if life itself is training us for something later on. And it seems to me that what happened to you is life, God was training you for what was going to come after. It wasn't for the marathon per se. It was for your own personal marathon that you're going to be running after the PTSD, the depression, and how you're able to. So I concur very much with, again, the doctors are concerned about this, but long before you already been through this. It happened to me too. When you get to a point and people are worried about you, what are you talking about? I've been going through my own pandemic in life for however many years since this and this.
People don't recognize until it's happening to them. Wow. Not only did you go through the pandemic with the world, but you were in your own personal pandemic. You had a double whammy. It was unfolding in stages. Because I remember when the detective came to the hospital to interview me, it was interesting. The first thing he says to me is, so I heard that you used to weigh almost 400 pounds. And I'm thinking to myself, what does that have to do with the shooting? He says, so you're a runner, huh? And I was like, yeah. And he said, if you would have still been weighing almost 400 pounds, you would not be alive. He said that he watched the video and he's seen how I hopped to my feet and ran. And even though after that I got shot 4 more times, he was like, if you were almost 400 pounds, you wouldn't have been able to hop to your feet like you did. You would have been dead. Right then and there.
And you also saved your coworkers' lives.
Yes. And then that's what hit me like it hit you just now. It hit me back then, is that this wasn't just about me, my life, but God was preparing me to use me to save lives at an event that nobody had any knowledge of at the time. And although I benefited from it, I believe that there was a purpose, a sovereign purpose of God in using me to save people's lives. And then again, with the pandemic coming to play, getting through that because I had already been in my personal, and then using me to tell my story to encourage people post-trauma, post-pandemic, especially here in Houston. You remember Harvey? We had Harvey too. Harvey was like nothing I've ever seen in Houston. No flooding I've ever seen in Houston. It flooded in place that no other hurricane has ever caused it to flood. And when you're making a decision like the Army Corps of Engineers, where they got to either release the dams or flood Katy, Texas, Katy ain't never flooded. It was crazy. You had Richmond, Rosenberg, Sugarland, these areas flooding like they never flooded. What's going on? And even to this day, there still are repairs being done. Homes are being rebuilt from Harvey. Even to this day, when it rains, you see the number of people that just pull over and sit in their cars with their flashers on because they're traumatized. So with me telling my story now, it's like I experience personally what the world would come to experience publicly. As I move from one stage to the other, the world is behind me and what I've gone through personally so that I can run and serve the global community. There have been people that have recognized that. So I get invited to different events to speak, to do my book signings, to connect with people. I told somebody one day, I have never in my life hugged and cried with so many grown men since I've been going around speaking about running for your mental health. I was in Canada and I was speaking and doing a book signing. I'm talking to a group of guys, sharing about my book and my story and encouraging them to make a donation and get an autographed copy. This other guy walks up and he had purchased the book, made a donation a day before at the expo. While I'm talking to these guys, he walks up and y'all have to get this book. He said, I started reading it last night and I was bawling my eyes out. I'm thinking to myself, I got 5 grown men here talking to another grown man at a public event, an expo, and he's sharing how he was bawling his eyes out. Where do you see that take place where men talk to other men about their vulnerabilities?
Let me ask you this. The name of your book, Metal Monday, is that correct?
Yes, metal with a D, like the medallion, Metal Monday.
It's your first book, right?
Yeah, and I didn't write it. It wrote me. I tell people all the time. They say, you're an author. I'm like, you can say that, but I didn't write it. It wrote me. And I didn't set out to write a book. I did a vlog journal with Zoom. Then I ended up doing a bunch of interviews I wasn't even planning on doing with news stations, newspapers, magazines, Runner's World, several Fox affiliates. I did so much with the New York Marathon. I had articles and blogs. There was a podcast called Run the Race where he records his podcast while running marathons. He interviews people during the race. And he did a podcast with me. He wanted to get more into it. So he did one with me pretty much like you and I are doing. Then I had this total stranger, Dr. Lauren Murfield, who co-authored the book with me. He surprised me and put all this stuff together in a transcript from interviews and everything with me. I had typed it up out of my voice. And he gave it to me after I finished the quest. I was thinking to myself, wow. He was like, you need to tell your story. He's an executive coach, very intelligent. He has a doctorate in communications, used to teach at universities. He does executive coaching now and ghostwriting or book editing, things of that nature. But if somebody want to reach out to him, look him up on LinkedIn, Lauren Murfield, the guy spelling Loren. putting him in my life changed things for me. He asked me a question one day, and he was very humble. He said, not that I've done anything, but that God used me. He said, if it wasn't for the book, Metal Monday, what would you be doing right now? I have no idea. This guy took it upon himself to spend time coaching me without me even knowing I was being coached. Literally, he befriended me. He called me every Monday like clockwork. He went above and beyond. I'm grateful for that. I tell people all the time to reach out to him because I always try to find people. If I need somebody to do something for me, I want somebody that is passionate about what they do, not just somebody that does something. If I need something done, I want somebody that's passionate, somebody that cares, somebody that is considered their whisperer. When you think about different industries and people doing things, and you know that certain people stick out like a sore thumb among their peers. He's not just somebody doing something and making money. He's changing lives.
That's beautiful. We have to have a purpose. Exactly. I'm curious, the title of your book, Metal Monday. Tell me about the title.
The reason why Metal Monday is because the medals that you get from races. I just happen to have one here. One of my favorite ones is from the Denver Colfax Marathon. And those people are awesome over there. If you haven't ran the Colfax Marathon, they got a race for everybody. And I do mean everybody, even the kids. They got a kids 1K, the marathons, the half, the relays. They got a 10-miler, 5-miler. They got all kind of stuff. The half marathon is popular among women just because of the distance. At the Colfax Marathon, the women get to run through the fire department, so they get to see a man with all these muscles, and they had their fire gear on without their shirts and their suspenders. So that's one of the favorite parts of the course.
I used to be into running over a decade ago. I ran the Rose Bowl. I think it was in Dothan, Alabama. That was the only marathon I've ever run, but I was running as a hobby. And in 1 year, I ran like 600 miles. At that time, I joined the Air Force training for the morning runs and whatnot. And
Yeah.
it was mostly for fun. I did my own little 5Ks here and there. A lot of the things you mentioned, it's amazing. Running, you said running is therapy. Some people think it's therapy, but it's therapeutic. At that time, I was literally running for a lot of things that were happening in my life. It helped me tremendously. I imagine my problems were behind me, chasing me, and that helped me run faster. It helped me a lot.
That's what I deal with when I go talk. I challenge people to get therapy, whether it's spiritual, mental, emotional, physical. There are people out there running in pain, injured, and they refuse to get therapy. Whatever aspect of your person that you need, go get therapy, because running is going to help you live life and help you with your burdens.
Right.
But the responsibility to address the why is important.
I talk a lot about, I don't know if you ever read this book, The Body Keeps the Score. It talks about trauma and how trauma gets stored in your body physically, hence the pain. And there are somatic therapies such as, let's say, yoga. I recently went back to yoga, not as a spiritual practice necessarily, but to release the tension, the stress. When I went back to it, there were some tears because I was releasing. It helped me. We all have trauma. It doesn't have to be visible. We all have wounds. They don't have to be necessarily visible ones. In your case, you were shot, and unfortunately, you had to go through that. And so many other things, trauma from childhood. I speak very much about it here in the podcast. And it also very curious because you happen to be in Texas. I'm in Texas. I was wondering, what was your experience with mental health treatment in Texas? Because I don't know then, but right now, I work in neurology, and the amount of people trying to get counseling or psychiatric help, it's amazing. There are not enough counselors, not enough psychiatrists for the people.
Definitely.
Month waits.
And with all
And
the
so it's a
tragedies that have
challenge.
happened, there wasn't enough to begin with. And then with all the tragedies that happen in Texas, there's not enough to keep up with. One of the things I encourage people when I'm going around is, first and foremost, the greatest doctor is Jesus. I tell people what you want to do with him is entirely up to you. When people ask me questions, the bedrock answer that I have to give them is the only reason I'm here in my right mind is because of the Lord Jesus. Now, he's used people to do that. Even my therapist, my psychologist, my psychiatrist, I talk to them and sometimes they'll get stumped on things and trying to figure this out. You're not going to be able to help me completely. You're a tool that I'm using, but you're not the source. You're the tool. I encourage my doctors at times. I've even helped them with their life by them talking to me. And it's like parenting, right? You say stuff and you're speaking to yourself. It changes you. Same thing in that profession. Now, I do know that Texas has a $9 billion budget for mental health that hasn't been spent. And they're trying to decide how they're going to spend it to help here in Texas. I tell people all the time that are in that professional line of work that they may want to think about moving to Texas because Texas got a lot of money stored up that they need to spend, but they got to do something. I think this next legislation is going to enact some things.
I wonder, what are they waiting for?
How you go about doing it. Things build and things
Because
have
there's a real need in the community. I know forehand for it. I see it all the time. I used to be in primary care and I learned how to treat and help people with psychiatric disorders. And I'll be like, okay, I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you a 90-day supply. We're going to work through this, but you got to go to psychiatry. They'll come back 3 months later, haven't been able to get in. They come back 6 months later, haven't been able to come in. Yes, they show me where they are in a waiting list. Even today in neurology, I see patients all the time. I do my best to help them.
When I went through the shooting, I had to fight to get my doctors. Time. It took multiple pleas.
Yes,
and then they only agreed to do an assessment. My psychologist and psychiatrist were booked. They didn't have room. That was in 2015. I didn't start seeing my psychologist until the day after my birthday. I believe you, I understand it. And that was part of why I put this quest together, this challenge for myself. Because I tell people, you got to become the CEO of your own healthcare, mental health care especially.
Be your own advocate.
If you don't fight for yourself, I know you need help, but I needed help too. But I realized how desperate I was and that I had to do something because I couldn't wait on everybody else. I encourage people to take ownership and become the CEO, advocate for themselves. You have people doing their job, but then you have to go above and beyond. It was only because we kept asking, kept knocking, kept seeking that I even got with the doctors that I have now. I started doing research myself. I came to find out that when it comes to PTSD, there are two things that help the most: massage therapy and running. There are scientific studies on it. When I got the studies, because they were done by universities, I sent them to all my doctors and insurance companies, sent it to everybody. This is science. This is fact. This is data. This is not just me telling you what I need. This is not just the emotional part and what you're experiencing with my words. I have outside data of myself. I was fortunate enough to have been recommended to the world's leading authority on PTSD to do an assessment. It lasted a day and a half. I had to go up to Boston. It was something else. His report, like 84 pages long, just assessing me, was like, wow, I have all this ammunition. If I did not take ownership and become my own CEO of my own mental health, that wouldn't have happened at all. none of those things would have happened. Whatever is going to happen, a lot of times you're going to have to make it happen. When people see how desperate you are, it pours over. Now, I had some people that were just stiff-necked, hard-hearted. Everything was a job to them. They were short. They were mean towards me. They said mean things. And it just fueled my fire to get help. That's why I was saying the shooting was actually the best thing that happened to me out of all these things. Not that it was a good thing to happen. I'm just putting it in light that most people think, okay, you were shot, a bullet missed your femoral artery by 1 centimeter, you almost died, and that was the best thing. What else happened? The stuff that came after it was a whole lot worse. So when I did this quest, this is what that was about. I had no idea the book was going to happen. I had no idea that interviews would take place. I had no idea that I would be in Runner's World magazine. I had no idea that CNN would pick up my story and broadcast it. But the thing that I consistently tell people is you have to connect with what you need. And I needed it. So I had a team of people. I had my pastor and the elders of my church pray over me. I was exercising my faith. It started there. The book of James says that if any are sick among you, let him call for the elders and let them anoint you and pray over you. So I started it spiritually, going after the insurance company, the company I was working for, getting that mental help, getting the physical therapy. And then with my pastor and also my psychologist and psychiatrist, not only was I getting the mental and spiritual, but I was also getting the emotional help I needed. My physical therapists, they were working with me on the physical part of it. My mental as well, because it all ties into how you think. My body was so traumatized that I was doing simple exercises that one of my trainers was telling me to do, just laying down. He would ask me to move certain groups of muscle. Like if he was to tell you to blink your eye, and instead of blinking your eye, your nose started wiggling. It was like the neural path connectors were everywhere. I was like, wow, what is happening? He began to explain it to me. So when I would go to the gym with him, I'm thinking I'm about to sweat, got my water bottle. We're about to do some major stuff. He said, we're not going to do that. I'm going to do some assessments about your movement. He had me lay down on the ground, had me do certain stuff. And I kid you not, he would tell me to do something with a particular muscle, and I would try to do it, and another muscle moved. And so everything was just messed up with me. I started from the ground up with this quest. I was getting my massage therapy, like you talked about with the yoga and how the purging and crying. It was like the poison was coming out of my body physically, emotionally. Tears would just drip and didn't know why. I had good friends of praying with me, my prayer partners. One of my prayer partners, Herb, was the jokester, kept me laughing. Laughing is good medicine for the soul. And then I had another prayer partner, Lomar, I call him Lolo. Lomar, he would just look at me at church or call me and tell me, man, you're not crazy. He served in the military as well. So he would tell me, you're not crazy. And I needed to hear that because there were times I literally called my doctors and asked them to have me committed because I couldn't tell reality from whether I was hallucinating or what was happening.
Let me ask you this. Were you in the military?
So I was in the military. I got recruited when I was in high school. I did go on the weekends with the reserves and do things before I was supposed to go off. I wasn't doing a traditional recruiting, going to boot camp, that type of thing. I was in the military and I ended up getting an honorable discharge because my mom, her oldest son, which is my brother, was diagnosed with a fatal kidney disease and given a year to live. I had another brother, Matt, who was on the USS Missouri at the time. He was an electronic warfare specialist responsible for shooting down the Scud missiles. He was already in the Gulf War. I was supposed to be going off for a 2-year training assignment in Europe. During the Gulf War, my mom was afraid she was going to lose 3 sons in 1 year. She asked my recruiter if there was anything that could be done for me to stay home. Unbeknownst to me, she did that. I got a call from my recruiter saying they were going to give me an honorable discharge. So I had an honorable discharge from the Army.
In the Air Force.
Yeah.
I was MEPS in Maxwell Air Force in Montgomery. They could not get me the job that I wanted. I wanted to be a medic, but I was not a citizen at the time. I ended up getting an honorable discharge. That way I could go to nursing school. Because every morning I was getting up and doing it. I continued running until I had a knee situation. Aaron, is there anything you have not asked you that you would like to share with the audience?
I've shared the very important stuff. The message is running isn't therapy. Whatever exercise, whatever it might be that take care of the symptoms and help strengthen you, you can't depend upon that to change you. Because you may go through a situation like I went through where I wasn't able to run any longer. Thanks to God, I was dealing with the emotional trauma from childhood, adulthood, things done to me, things that I did, being forgiven of my sins, an assurance of heaven, dealing with guilt that would destroy your body. It's worse than cancer. Cancer at least shows up physically. You can get it treated, but guilt manifests itself physically in your body. You don't know it's tied to your guilt. I had that taken care of beforehand when the shooting, and now I'm dealing with trauma. And I didn't know how to deal with that. Could you imagine had I been dealing with all of it at one time? When you talked about things happening in stages, I recognized that early on, and I'm grateful for it. The darker things got, I only had hope in Christ. That was it.
I had those thoughts too.
I talk to people from all walks of life about what I've been through. They approach me, ask for my help. I get people who are agnostic, atheists, different religions, extreme beliefs. I tell them who I am, who I'm rooted in. I let them know the only thing I can tell you is the truth of the word of God that's biblical and what Christ has done for me and how he can help you. People will listen, even though they tell me I don't believe in that. I'm like, that's for you to wrestle with. But if you want me to help you, I'll help you. And it's amazing that I get invited and I get people reaching out to me from all walks of life. Because at the end of the day, I don't care who you are. Your trauma has trained you. And until you take care of your trauma and retrain yourself, you're just going to continue doing the same things. These are all tools. The running, whatever you're doing, therapy, praying, going to church, having the elders pray over you, all that stuff is tools. All that stuff they're resources. The source is God. And the healing that needs to happen, it comes from the Spirit of God, and it takes place through you and with you, and you learn more about you. And that's where the transformation takes place.
One thing I wanted to say is, what do you do when it's raining outside and you cannot go for a run? What do you do when there's too much work to do and you don't even have time to meditate? If you put all your faith in running, it doesn't work. When you think about it, what works, to me, I have experienced the same thing. What got me here after so many things I got through in life is the anchor in me, because he does the work from the inside out. Everything else we try in our own human strength, right? That's my take on it.
Here's the thing. I tell people, the busier you get, the more demanding the load is, the more desperate the hurt is. It's if you have an apex, you can put so much weight on top of that. And even the weight that you put on there will have to be balanced. But the more weight, the bigger the base has to be to support it. And even then, it's still balanced. It's just spread out over a bigger area. So I tell people, spread your base out and you'll be able to carry your load. But if you try to carry your load without a base, it's only going to crush you.
I find the Word of God so encouraging and so full of hope in so many ways. And let me tell you why, because one of them, because I have other ones, but I love when Jesus says, in this life, you're all going to have pain. You're all going to have struggles. You're going to have come to me. So he's acknowledging that life is hard, that it's not going to be easy for any of us. Look at him. He had to suffer in the cross and all the things that we know. So right there, we're starting on the right foot, acknowledging. But if we go on life thinking that something is going to solve our problems, or if we do this, or if we take this elixir, let's just be honest. Life is not easy, but it's easier when you have your strength, or you have the one who actually fights the battles for you. That's my take on it. In my personal life, that's what has happened. He fights battles for me that I don't even know they're happening. I love what you said.
We can have a whole episode about that.
I am a Christian, but truly believe in God and in Jesus Christ. I have people from all walks of life come to this podcast. I want them to tell me what I know. I don't close myself, because we're not supposed to do that. We're supposed to be the salt of the world. We're supposed to have these conversations, no matter how uncomfortable they are, with believers, non-believers, people from different, and we should be able to talk, because like you said, whatever they do with it, that's their wrestling. I don't believe in discrimination, judging, because I believe that we were all created by God. We're all His creation. We're not all His children. Exactly.
But I like what Jesus says, that only the sick need a physician. That's all I'm looking for, is the people that realize they're sick and they're needing help. The debaters, the philosophers, the people that want to come and just talk to talk, there's enough platforms for that. I'm looking for the hurting. I'm looking for people that are, were, or will be where I was, where I am, and where I'm going. At the end of the day, my doctors used to ask me about suicide. Did I want to kill myself? Did I want to kill anybody else? Things of that nature. One of the things that sparked that conversation is the company that I worked for actually slandered me and said that I called into the corporate office and threatened that if I didn't get any help, I was going to go in and shoot up the place, which was crazy because the phone call was actually recorded by the company, and they just ended up looking like a bunch of fools. There were questions I had to answer. And they asked me, what's keeping you going? I told them I have hope. Eventually, they would ask me, what is your hope in? I said, not a what, but a who. And he said, who is your hope in? Yeah. And I told him, Jesus Christ. I said, because I know he lives. I said, I know I'm going to get through this situation. I can't tell you when, I can't tell you how, but I know as long as that sun come up tomorrow and the moon come up tonight, the earth and the heavens remain. And I know I can trust his promises. Amen. Said, and that's why I go and sit outside so much, not the vitamin D, but I literally will go and sit out there to look at his creation and to see how he's maintaining his creation, knowing that I am a created being. So if he's maintaining everything else, he's maintaining me. And I'm trusting his process, even though I can't see it. I don't know when it's going to change. Everything was telling me not to. My body, the environment, people, the company. People would tell me, nobody would blame you if you just gave up on life. But he's been faithful. My dad passed this past December. And one of the last talks I had with my dad, he said, son, don't stop trusting in Jesus. Too many people are looking at you. And if you give up, they're going to say, if he gave up, then what chance do I have? He says, don't stop trusting in Jesus. I said, Dad, I'm not. There's no other place to go.
Aaron, you have a story of great grace and what I believe is divine purpose. I think you didn't just run marathons. I think you ran back to your life. And in the process, you brought countless others along for the journey. So I want to say to the listeners out there that if today's conversation moved you, make sure you get a copy of Metal Monday. You'll laugh. I'm sure you'll cry. But you're definitely going to be reminded of the power of perseverance. And for those of you that believe in Jesus, pretty sure you will too. So thank you, Aaron. Thank you for being here with us today. One last thing, how do people get a hold of you? How do our audience get in touch with you?
You can Google The Running Servant. My Instagram is @TheRunningServant. You can also reach out to me through email, aaronburros@yahoo.com. If you want an autographed copy of the book, just DM me, or you can make a donation of $30 or more to any of my social apps like PayPal, Cash App. All of those are @RunningServant. Or you can DM me on my social media, Facebook, Instagram. I'm not good at Twitter. I think I need to take lessons from Donald Trump. I'm not good at Twitter, although I do have Twitter. And if you send me a message on Twitter, I'll get the notification. But Instagram and Facebook would be better. If you want an autographed copy, just connect with me.
Very good. Thank you so much for being here with us today. So until next time, everybody, stay unscripted. Thank you.
If this episode spoke to you, if it sparked a thought, a feeling, or a shift, I invite you to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss an episode. Visit www.rosabelzofel.com. Here on Rosabel Unscripted, we dive deep into real stories, mindful moments, and conversations that matter. Every week, we explore themes like resilience, healing, transformation, and the courage to rewrite your own story. So if you're ready to grow, reflect, and walk this journey with an open heart, hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's keep the conversation going. There are new episodes every week.